I'm Tanika Meeks. Welcome to Get Real. Please take a moment to hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date on new content. For announcement, the scheduling for the Get Real dating series has been changed. It was supposed to be a monthly podcast, but due to the fact that my brother has his own obligations, the Get Real dating series will become more of a sporadic podcast. So if I know there's going to be an upcoming episode, I'll be sure to let you know. But hey, don't be on the lookout for it every month because it's not going to happen. Some shameless advertising. I'm a self-published author. I have 3 books. I write in the science fiction romance genre. I've written Cat Eyes, True Nature, and 4 Elements. 4 Elements is now available on Amazon, ACX, and Audibles. So show me some love. Either go buy an ebook or go check out 4 Elements on audiobook. And last but not least, an exciting new project. Now, I'm beta testing the actual project, but if you want to go check it out, please be sure to go do so. It's called Exposure. Exposure will be an online radio station hosted by yours truly. The whole point of Exposure is to give new podcasters and emerging podcasters like myself a chance to showcase their work. It's hard. It's very hard to find an audience, to be a small fish competing in a very, very big pond, and with podcasters with extremely large audiences and a lot of financing to back them. So the point and purpose of Exposure is to give the little guy, like me, a chance to get in front of an audience. Right now, the only content on Exposure is my own. I'm using my own podcast to beta test the radio station. So over the next couple weeks, it will be live, but the only content on there will be my own. And as that starts to change, I'll be sure to let other people know. As of Friday, the radio station will go on air. There will be a link on my website, www.tmgetreal.com, where you can go in and take a listen. But for those who have been following Get Real from the beginning, it'll just be a whole lot of content you've already heard. But if you're new to Get Real, hey, this will be a chance for you to hear all the episodes that you've missed. So again, I'm very excited, very nervous. This is a first for me, but I am very excited the opportunity that Exposure will present for new podcasters who choose to want to air their content in front of an audience, and maybe it'll help even the playing field and give us a chance to grow our podcast without waiting years and years and years. So be on the lookout for that. You will hear something about Exposure probably every week going forward. I will be sure to make sure I keep everyone up to date on what's going on with Exposure. But hey, if you love me, if you love the Get Real podcast, or even if you know another smaller podcast who could definitely use it, be sure to shoot them a message. Let them know, everyday people who have something to say are starting podcasts every day. But the hard part about it is finding someone to listen. It is hard to find an audience. I am still struggling to get Real off the ground. There is still Get Real still has a very, very small audience. And so I'm hoping Exposure will change that. So more to come on that. Remember, if you actually want to go take a listen, I'll have a link on my website, www.tmgetreal, this Friday, March 5th, where you can go and listen as I air old episodes of Get Real on my new online radio station, Exposure. So now that I'm done with the shameless advertising, let's get into today's content. So today's message is when you can't let go, or can't let go. There was actually a book I read several years ago, and the book was called Can't Let Go. And it was about this woman who was married to a man who was a complete and utter asshat. He was a douchebag if I had ever read about one. And for those who don't know, I love books. I love to read. That's actually where my love of writing came from. I am an avid reader. I love books. So I was reading this book about this woman who was married to this just horrible, horrible man. He was cheating on her. He was beating on her. I mean, this man was just doing everything humanly possible to break this woman down. And the reason she stayed with this man is because she had made up her mind that divorce was not an option. Regardless of what he did to her, She had made up her mind that she was not going to divorce this man. You know, regardless of how many women he paraded in front of her face, he had outside children, he had started beating on her. Regardless of what this man did to her, she had made up her mind that she was not going to divorce him. Now, what ultimately caused her to change her mind is, at one part of the book, this man jumped on her and he beat her very bad to where she ended up in a hospital. She had to have nose surgery and her jaw wired shut. That's how bad he beat her in this book. Now, of course, there were definitely other things that were going on in this book. You know, the man was incredibly self-destructive, had a very toxic nature, but we're not talking about that. I'm talking from her point of view. And so often in life, we struggle with letting go of things that are hurting us, either physically, mentally, or emotionally. We struggle with letting go of unhealthy attachments, of toxic relationships, of codependency. We just struggle to let go of even platonic relationships, friendships, even familiar relationships that are hurting us. You know, I see, as I say all the time, I'm on social media all the time, you know, people act like there's this magic formula to letting go. And the truth of the matter is, there isn't. Letting go is hard. It's extremely hard. But at some point in our life, we have to realize there's no point in holding on to things that are not good for us, that are no longer serving us, that are no longer helping us to be a better version of ourselves. And that's really what today's content is about. It's about when you make up your mind to let go. And I'm not going to lie to you, I can't give you the 3 steps to letting go. I can't give you this magical formula to let go. I can't tell you at what point of your abusive relationship to let go. I wish I could oversimplify this, but I can't. This is a very dynamic issue. And if you talk to a mental health professional, they'll tell you it's a dynamic issue. This is not cut and dry. Letting go is different for everybody. We all have our own thresholds when it comes to pain. We all have our own thresholds when it comes to the fact that someone has crossed the line with us. I have a high threshold for emotional pain. So it's going to take longer for somebody like me to let go versus somebody else. And so I really wish I could, make this very dynamic issue very simple, but it's not simple. Life is not simple. And I hate when people take content like this and try to act like it is simple. Like it should just be this and you let go. But that's not life. Unhealthy attachments are hard to get out of. Trauma bonds are hard to get out. Codependencies are hard to let go of. This is not a simple issue. I wish it was, but it really is not. And so today I'm going to share with you of 3 instances in my life where I had to let go. Now I'm going to make them short and quick because 2 of these have already been talked about, and I will bring up the podcast where I kind of went more in depth on what happened. And then the last issue is just something new, just something here recently that I wanted to share. So if some of you are wondering why I'm sitting next to a teddy bear, this is called Bear Bear. Bear Bear is my director and one of my executive producers. So oftentimes Bear Bear is behind the scenes. I will often put him behind my camera as something for me to focus on. It gives me a focal point. It gives me someone to talk to. But today, Bear Bear is actually in front of the camera. So for those of you who are listening to the audio and you're like, what is she talking about? Bear Bear is kind of a little yellowish golden teddy bear. If you want to, you can actually go on my YouTube channel, Tanika Meeks, and you can actually see Bear Bear. Bear Bear is actually in three of my videos. So I put him around as something that kind of helped me relax, because being in front of the camera actually makes me nervous. So I decided to he's right next to me today. He's kind of, my buddy as I talk to this subject, because it is painful. It is hard. There's no cut and dry answer. I wish there was. I really wish that there was this magical formula to where you just knew when to let go. But that's not life. So the first kind of instance I'm going to bring up is One I talked about in No HEA, which is No Happily Ever After. For those who didn't know, I noticed on some of my podcasts, a lot of people have been actually going back and listening to old podcasts, I guess to get a feel for who I am. And I will do an episode where I talk more about me and who I am and some of my struggles. But some of the older podcasts have a lot of information about who I am and the mental and emotional things that I have struggled with. So No HEA was about my very short-lived marriage. I was only married for about less than 9 months. I married a complete nutcase. He was a basket case, had I ever seen one. And unfortunately for me, it was my own mental unhealthiness that attracted me to this man. I am a big advocate of counseling. I have gone to counseling twice myself and will probably continue to go the rest of my life. Counseling is not a magical cure. Counseling just helps you realize that you have a problem, and it helps you learn how to deal with that problem in a healthy manner. Counseling is not a cure-all. I would never tell anyone, if you go to counseling, you'll walk out of there a better person. I'm a better person, but I will forever spend the rest of my life struggling with certain parts of my life. And if it wasn't for counseling, I probably would have never found the strength to leave my ex-husband. Counseling helped open my eyes to so much of my own toxic behavior, so much of my own mental unhealthiness. And so in No HEA, I kind of walk you through and talk you through my very destructive marriage. My ex-husband was a nut, and he was a certifiable nut. It had got to a point where he was actually being abusive. He had actually started fighting me during arguments in our relationship. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me, because I made up my mind that first of all, I had done nothing to this man where I deserved to be hit, where I deserved someone jumping on me, where I deserved somebody trying to chastise me like a child. Arguments happen in a relationship. And if you're in a relationship to where every time you express yourself, you're being hit, or this person is trying to reprimand you, or this person is trying to put you in your place, it's time to leave. In a relationship, if you don't feel free to express yourself in a healthy manner without some type of repercussion, it's time to go. No one should be afraid in a relationship. If you feel like, oh, if I express myself, he gonna be mad, he gonna be hit, he gonna hurt me, he gonna hit me, it's time to go. Now, again, I will say this. People stay in unhealthy relationships, toxic relationships, abusive relationships, whether it's mental abuse or emotional abuse, like dealing with a narcissist, for 1,000 different reasons. As I said, this is a very dynamic issue. And even though I'm telling you, if these things happen, there are people who are going to look at this podcast and be like, well, I really wish I could, but we have kids together. He's my sole source of income. I really don't have a way out. And unfortunately, that's the reality for a lot of women and men. There are men who are actually out there being physically abused. And I wish that was actually talked about more. And so while it's easy for family and friends to tell you to leave, you don't always have the resources to leave. And I understand that. I understand that sometimes it's not as cut and dry as packing your bags and leaving, especially when you have children in tow and you have no way of taking care of them, or you have nowhere to go with them. And so again, I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to oversimplify this topic. That's not what's happening. I understand the depth and the breadth to what I'm talking about. And there is no simple solution. I really wish there were, but there isn't. And so when my ex-husband started fighting me, I knew then it was time to go. Now again, I didn't leave immediately. The first time we actually got into it was in June, was it June or July? I think it was July of 2018. I didn't leave him until November of 2018, and we got legally divorced in January of 2019. So I'm not going to act like the first time he hit me, I packed my bags and I left. That's not what happened. Actually, the first time he hit me, we actually started fighting. That was the first thing. And then I forgave him. And we tried to move on like it never happened. But then it happened again. And then it happened again. And the third time it happened, I'm going to be honest with everybody on this podcast. I actually went and got my gun. I have a gun, a registered gun, a legal gun. And at that point, I was prepared to defend myself. Now, I wasn't going to kill him. I thought about pistol whipping him, but I was not going to kill him. But trust me, if I had to put a bullet in him to get my point across, I was prepared to do that as well. But luckily, once I went and got my gun, he realized I was serious and he left. But again, the first time we got into it was in July. He didn't leave to November. So again, that was not a cut and dry situation. That situation went on for a couple months. I would love to be with those women and be like, oh, the first time a man hit me, I'm gone. It didn't happen. I don't know why it didn't happen. But I'll tell you why. At the time, I was still a very mentally unhealthy woman. I had made up my mind, kind of like that book, Can't Let Go, that I was married and I didn't want to get divorced. And I was going to do everything in my power to try to make my marriage work. And I'm going to say something that's going to bother a lot of people. A lot of people don't leave toxic relationships or mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive relationships or unhealthy attachments or trauma bond attachment. Half of the problem is you. Most of us make up our mind at some point what we intend to do. We become somehow committed to these unhealthy relationships. For me, I was committed to trying to make my marriage work. But that also means I became committed to a crazy person. Had I stayed in that marriage, there is no doubt in my mind at some point that man probably would have killed me. So here I am committing to making my marriage work, but I was also in a way almost committing to staying in a situation that was going to be the death of me. If you've ever talked to anyone in a bad or unhealthy relationship, they realize that they're in a bad or unhealthy relationship. Even if you've ever talked to somebody in an abusive relationship, they realize they're in an abusive relationship. And a lot of times when you ask them, why do you stay? Why don't you leave? Why can't you get out? The part that they don't want to tell you, at some point, they've committed themselves to it. And it may not be committing to that person. It may be committed to, well, he's the father of my children and I don't want to break up my home. Or I don't have the resources to leave and he's the one taking care of us, so I have to stay. Or it could be a reason like me. I was a mentally unhealthy person. I was somebody desperate for love and affection. And so it could be their own mentally unhealthiness that's keeping them in their situation. Letting go is easier said than done. I wish, like I said, I wish this was a simple topic. That when we first see those first signs, those first red flags, that we leave. That the first time that person hit us, that we leave. That the first time they do something emotionally abusive, that we leave. But for most of us, we don't. And we won't. For whatever reason. And those reasons could be numerous. Again, I'm not going to try to oversimplify what I consider a dynamic topic. And letting go is not easy. But for me, once he started hitting on me, once he started jumping on me, that was the beginning of the end. I started making plans to get myself out of that situation because I knew it was either going to come down to him killing me or me killing him, because I was not going to go to my grave without fighting. But thank God it didn't come to that. Once I went and got my gun, he realized I was not playing with him. And trust me when I say I wasn't. And so the second instance I'm going to talk about is Narcissistic Love. If any of you have ever listened to that. A narcissistic love is about my first love. I met my first love when I was 33 years old. So I want to make this very clear. My ex-husband and my first love are not the same person. You know, when I met I'll call him my first love, you know, I just thought this man was wonderful. Now, again, I didn't realize me and him had this very deep, and to this day, I still struggle with it. We had a very deep trauma bond. He was the first person I think I actually had a trauma bond with. I thought it was love at first. But again, going through counseling, getting older, actually looking back and reflecting, I realized it wasn't love. It wasn't love at all. You know, I had a very deep trauma bond with this man. He was a narcissist. He was looking for somebody to love him, and I was looking for somebody to love. And so we fit together perfectly. I was a woman. I'm confident, but I was not always sure of myself. And what little confidence I had, trust me, he destroyed. When I tell you this man took me on a roller coaster, he took me on a roller coaster. And I loved him, or I thought I loved him, every step of the way. I was committed to being with this man. I was committed to trying to be the woman he wanted me to be. I was committed to trying to be good enough for him, not realizing you can never and will never please a narcissist. You can give them the world, they'll still spit in your face and say it's not enough. But again, I had committed myself to this. I had committed myself to jumping through the hoops of a narcissistic person. And if anyone has dealt with a narcissist, I can't even put into words. And I spent 3 years dealing with this man, and actually some years after that dealing with him, because he left my life. I got married, then he came back into my life. My ex-husband was the first time I went to counseling. My first love was the second reason I went to counseling. But what really was that letting go point for me when I realized that this man truly didn't care about me. That this man truly didn't care anything about me. That every time I tried to express myself, he took it as an argument. He took it as me being combative, me being aggressive, me having an attitude. Regardless of how minor the situation was, every time I tried to defend myself, I was having an attitude. I was being opinionated. I was being combative. I literally couldn't say anything to that man unless I was saying, yes, you're right. Oh, I like that idea. If I was doing anything other than agreeing with him, I was being combative. I was being aggressive. It didn't matter how many of my ideas he shot down. It didn't matter how critical he was of me. You know, he could say pretty much anything he wanted to say to me, and that was fine. But I don't care how small the situation. If I disagreed, I was trying to start an argument. I was being combative. And I just realized that was not the type of life. Who wants to be in a relationship where you can't express yourself, where you can't have an opinion? There is a difference between having an opinion and being combative. There is a difference between having an opinion and being argumentative. Don't get it twisted. I'll start an argument. There are times I have no issues starting an argument. But if I'm telling you, well, hey, I don't disagree with the decision you made, I don't think that's me starting an argument. That's me telling you that I don't agree with the decision you made. But no matter what I said to him, if it wasn't something he wanted to hear, I was trying to start an argument. And I just realized I don't want to spend the rest of my life like that. I don't want to spend the rest of my life where my voice doesn't count, where I am to be seen and not heard. I don't want to spend the rest of my life being criticized. That no matter what I did, it was never good enough. No matter how hard I try, I always failed. I don't want to spend the rest of my life with somebody who was determined to tear me down. Yeah, he would give me kudos every now and again for little stuff I did, but it was normally stuff tied to him. If I did something good in a way that it benefited him. But just on the humble, I never did anything right in his eyes. And when he asked me to marry him, it was like my life flashed before my eyes. And it wasn't a life I wanted to live. It was a very sad life. It was a very small life. And it was, in actuality, going to be the death of me while I was still alive. Because in essence, he was going to take my life. And I talk about that in Narcissistic Love. So if you want to know more about that topic, actually go back and listen to Narcissistic Love. And if you want to know more about my ex-husband, go back and listen to No HEA, No Happily Ever After. I talk more about those two situations in those episodes. But I just realized with my ex, this was not a life I wanted to live. I felt like I was being smothered. I felt like I was being suffocated. Everything I had to do with him. He didn't want my family around. He didn't want my friends around. Everything had to be about him. And again, that was not a life I didn't want. And so I knew it was time to go. I knew it was time to let go. Even though I thought, back then I thought I loved this man. I know better now. I just couldn't imagine a future with this man. And the one I did imagine was terrifying. It was terrifying. This man was literally going to suck the joy from my life while I was still alive. I didn't want that. I didn't want that at all. And so I knew it was time for me to go. And I've had to block this. I've blocked him in Yahoo Mail. I have blocked him on all social media. I have blocked him in my phone. I have blocked this man every way you can block another person. Because I know the trauma bond we share is very strong. Now, I don't want to be with this man, but I also don't want to fall back into that trap that I have fallen back in with this man time and time and time and time and time and time again. Sometimes when you walk away, you can't look back. When you walk away, there's nowhere to go but forward. And that's the stance I've taken with him. I don't want to look back. I don't ever want to look back. I just want to go forward. Because me and this man go way back, way back. And he knows me. He knows me. I will say that. And he's going to try to pull out all the stops to get me to fall back into those old habits of living my life to please him. And I'm just not that woman anymore. And I don't want to go back to being that woman. Again, counseling helped me recognize that mental unhealthiness I had. Counseling helped me recognize my own toxic traits. And I am a big advocate of counseling. I would not be where I am today if I was just trying to do the work myself. I knew that I needed help and that I couldn't help myself. I know a lot of people, well, pray about it. That's why God created counselors and therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists and all those people out there to help you. I know prayer changes things. God can change things. But sometimes the best thing you can do is tell God, which counselor should I go to? Because I need help above and beyond what I can do for myself. Don't ever be afraid to go get help if you need it. You can't always help yourself. You can't always diagnose yourself. Because if you could, you would have changed it a long time ago. It's nothing wrong. And don't ever let someone shame you into believing there's something wrong with going to get counseling or therapy or going to see a psychologist or psychiatrist if you need to. Sometimes we can't put our problems into words, and we need someone else to help us articulate that problem. And that's what those people are there for. And so my last instance is something that has been going on for a very, very long time in my life. For most of you know, I have a son. I have a 22-year-old son. I met my son's father when I was 17. My son's father is an extremely good-looking man. A nut, but extremely good-looking man. I was 17. He was 18 going on 19. You know, we were two, I like to call us, we were two lost souls. You know, two very much lost young people. Now, my son's father is a deadbeat dad. Has been for a very long time. And so you're probably wondering, well, if he's a deadbeat dad, why do you deal with him? My son's father, I don't know what happened to him. And honestly, I don't think he does either. I don't know if it's a mental illness. I don't know if it's some type of trauma. I don't know what it is. And I'm not going to sit here and try to diagnose it. But there is something mentally wrong with my son's father. And the older I've gotten, and especially with me going to counseling, that has become easy for me to see. Now, I've known that for a very long time. And my son's father's coping mechanism is alcohol. So, like when we were teenagers, you know, he was drinking and, you know, doing weed, and, you know, he got off into other substances, but nothing stuck. You know, alcohol has always been his coping mechanism of choice. So we pretty much broke up right before our son was born. And throughout my early 20s, we've always kept in contact. I've always known where my son's father was. He's not one of those men who just ran off and I lost contact with him. I've always known where he was. He's always kept in contact with me. I will give him that much. But we broke up right before our son was born, and we've always kept in contact. But as I said, my son's father has problems, and I'm not for sure what either his problem is or his problems are, because I'm more than sure it's plural. You know, very good looking man, extremely intelligent. My son's father is so intelligent, but it is something definitely wrong with him. And so he would get drunk when we were in our early 20s, and he would call me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, at first I would entertain this, you know, because I thought it was love. I was young. I didn't know no better. Oh, he loves me. He loves me. Because that's how the conversations would start off. It would start off with him, you know, declaring his eternal love for me. And then halfway through, he would start to get angry with me. And so it has always been this kind of love, hate. I don't know what it's about. And this went on all through my early 20s, even into my 30s. And it's pretty much been going on since he's been in my life, and he's been in my life 23 years. But my son's father mentally and emotionally hasn't grown up, and I don't know why. Again, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what this man's problem is, because I don't. I do know he has a problem, but I don't know what that problem is. And so my son is his middle child. He has an older brother and he has a younger brother. I only have the one kid, but his father has 3 boys. And my son's father kind of shows this incapability to love. Now, he will tell me he loves me. And I do believe in his heart he loves his children. I just don't think he knows what to do with that love. As I said, my son's father, he's been an absentee dad. He's been almost, oh no, he has, but I'm not going to say almost. He's been a deadbeat dad. He just seems lost. And I hate to keep saying that because it doesn't really say anything. And for those of you out there who have met people who are lost, you know what I'm talking about. But for everyone else, it's not a good way to describe it. My son's father has been lost for a very long time. And I don't think he'll ever be found. And one of the things that I've had to come to grips with over these past couple years, and I know for some of you this is going to sound very harsh, but I had to come to the realization that Jesus saves, Tanika does not. And some of you need to listen to what I just said, so I'm going to repeat it. Jesus saves, Tanika does not. Some of you right now are continuing to stay in these very messed up situations because you believe that your love is going to save somebody. That if you love this person enough, that they will change and become the person you want them to be. That is what you've committed yourself to. But let me let you in on a very sad reality. You can cut yourself into 1,000,000 pieces. And every time that person goes and does something destructive, you can hand them a piece of yourself. You can mutilate yourself all you want to try to please them. And it'll never make them whole. And in the end, you will be more broken than they are. And that's a very harsh and a very ugly reality. But it's also very true. While love is an amazing thing, you can't love somebody past their pain. You can love them through their pain. You can't love them past their pain. And they have to love themselves enough to want to change. And if they're broken, they have to love themselves enough to want to heal. And so many of us are broken, including myself, for trying to love another person too much, giving too much of ourselves to another person. And in the end, we end up more broken than they are. And so all this time, even though my son's father has been this super ass deadbeat, I've maintained contact with him, A, because I understand what it's like to be lost. And B, because I've always worried about him. You know, my son's father has been a drinker since when I met him. And he's in his 40s now. And I've known him for 23 years. And there's always been a part of me that has worried about him. And there will always probably be a part of me that will worry about him. But I've also come to the realization I can't save him. And until he deals with whatever issue he has, until he goes to get help for himself, there is nothing Tanika can do. Tanika cannot save him. And so a couple weeks back, he had got on, normally on the weekends, got on his little binge drinking, and he got to texting me. And it starts out like how it always does. You know, the I love yous, I still love you even all this time later. And a thought occurred to me, I haven't seen this man in years. And it has been even longer since me and him, outside of a few phone conversations about our son, have actually talked. And so I'm thinking to myself, what do you love? Who do you love? I'm not that 17-year-old girl anymore. And you're not that 19-year-old boy anymore. So what exactly do you love? How can you love somebody at this point you don't even know? And so, he texting. Well, like I said, a couple weeks ago, something started to happen that had never happened to me before in dealing with him, especially dealing with him, just me and him. Now, it's happened to me before when it came to our son, me getting frustrated and irritated with him for being a deadbeat dad. But as he was texting me his usual I love yous and blah, 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 I started to get annoyed. And that was the first time that has ever happened. Like I said, back in our early 20s when he used to do it, I thought it was love. Oh, he loves me. He wants to be with me. But again, as I say, I've gone to counseling now, so I know better. You're drunk. You're in your feelings. Whatever sorrow you're trying to drown in alcohol, I don't know, and I don't think he does either. But I don't want to deal with this crap because I have problems of my own. And you know what? I have to face my problems. I have to deal with my trauma. I don't want to deal with yours. And so me and him started to have words. And I'm not going to say an argument. We just had words. This was via text message. And sure enough, he got mad at me. He started trying to throw things in my face. He even brought up my bad marriage. Trying to throw little things in my face to make me angry. And I decided at that point in my life, I'm like, why am I entertaining this? It's not like our son is 4. Our son is 20. At the time, he was 21. I'm like, our son is 21 years old. I have no reason, none, to entertain this man or this foolishness. We don't have small children. I am not obligated to forever be a part of this man's life, just like he's not obligated to be a part of mine. And so as he's sending me all these back-to-back hateful text messages, I sent him one message and I was just like, I'm done with you. And this time for good. And I mean that. I have been more than patient with you. I have put up with a lot of bull crap from you. But the buck stops here. You're going to call block and you're going in there for good. And after I sent that text message, I put his ass in call block. And there he will forever stay. Because I can't save that man. No matter how much I talk to him, no matter how much I try to reason with him, no matter how much of my time I give him, I can't save him. But what I won't allow him to do is to drag me down in that pit of despair that he's in. Now, if one day he chooses to go get help for himself, maybe we can sit down and have a conversation. But I doubt that. He's used alcohol as a coping mechanism for 23 years. I highly doubt that's going to change. And you know what? That's his decision because it's his life. If that's how he wants to deal with his problems, then so be it. But that's not how he's going to deal with me. And I made up my mind that it was time to let that situation go because I wasn't going to deal with it any longer. That was my breaking point. Now, granted, he didn't really do anything to me besides annoy me and upset me. But I think 23 years is long enough to deal with that type of foolishness. And so I was just like, nope, sorry, cut, it's over. And while I wish I could literally tell you some magic solution to when it's time to let go, but that's going to be different for everybody. My advice to you, if you believe you're in a toxic relationship or you're in an abusive relationship, mentally or emotionally or physically, whether it's an unhealthy attachment, a trauma bond, codependency, and the list goes on and on and on. My advice is to ask yourself some serious questions and be honest with yourself about the answers. Because a lot of times we stick around in those situations not because that other person is spectacular or because they pull the wool over our eyes or they're charming the pants off of us. Most of the time it's because we've made some type of mental commitment either to them or to ourselves, or made some mental commitment to ourselves about them. And the first thing we need to do is to let go and be honest with ourselves. Because that's kind of that road down, starting to let go. Be honest about yourself, about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Sugarcoating shit is not going to help your life. Lying to yourself about why you're staying is not going to help your life. When you get honest and get real with yourself, that's that first step to changing your life. And that's that first step to also letting that person go and that situation go. Whether that be a job, whether that be a person, whether that be a friendship, whether that be a family member or family situation. If it's unhealthy, it's unhealthy. Cut it. Let it go. But first you have to be honest with yourself about it. And again, I'll probably do other videos when topics like this come up or things like this come up. I know, again, it's not cut and dry. I understand that. But I would tell anybody, get honest with yourself. Get real with yourself. I'm Tanika Meeks. This is the Get Real Vodcast. New content will be posted every Saturday or sometimes before Saturday. Word of mouth is still the best form of advertising. So if you like the videos or the podcast, please tell another person about it. For those of you who are actually true fans, please take a moment over the next 2 to 3 weeks to actually kind of listen to Exposure. It'll be on Live 365. Again, a link will be on my website, www.tmgetreal.com. And just take a moment to listen in. If you have any thoughts or any suggestions, please let me know. I'm trying to build up the content and get other new podcasters to let me air their podcasts. So it's going to take me a couple weeks to build it up. I'll definitely keep everyone posted. But hey, feel free. Live 365, Exposure, DJ Tanika Meeks. Right now, the only content on there is mine. And feel free, for those who haven't heard all my content, go on there and listen to it. It'll be playing back to back. You won't even have to hit the play button. Once you tune in, it'll just play automatically. But until we talk next week, I love you guys.